So, hi everybody. Before I begin, I'm going to give you a little update about my life. Um, right now, I'm in a bit of a rush with school. Um, I have to submit a second funding application by next Wednesday, and I have to submit a research paper by next Thursday. And it's plenty of stress, and I've always been, I think, pretty bad at dealing with stress. I find it hard to manage, but I think I'm getting better at it. And fortunately, after the coming week, I should have some room to breathe finally and get back to a bit of a more normal pace. Okay, so the topic for today is role models. So I think I've told you this before, but growing up as a kid, I didn't know what a transsexual was. You know, I knew I wanted to be a girl since very early, since at least as early as age 5. And I was made to understand that this wasn't normal, that I shouldn't be thinking that. And my mom told me, when I first told her about this, she told me not to tell anybody because it would make fun of me. And I realized pretty quickly that that was true. And so I didn't tell anybody else after that. And the same through high school, I didn't really feel this was something I could tell to my friends. I knew it would be, something that people would use to pick on me. And when you're in high school, you're very insecure, and people, the worst insult when you're a guy is to be called gay. You certainly don't want to tell people that you feel like you want to be a girl, because they're going to use that to annoy you as much as possible and to make your life hell. So I tried as hard as I could to look like a normal guy as much as possible. But I wasn't very happy because I felt extremely lonely. I felt alone in the world, really like some freak, I had these freakish thoughts about, what my life would be like if I was a girl, and I would think about that, almost every day. It would make me very uncomfortable. And maybe, if I had had a role model back then, if I knew what being transsexual was, if I knew about this, maybe it would have been a little bit easier, if I had someone to look up to. But that wasn't the case back then. I think when I was 14 years old is when I first saw a documentary about transsexuality, and basically it was all people like 50 years and older, mostly male to female transitioning. And the documentary was about the sex change itself. And these people, many of them had kids and wives. And I think they chose the people for that documentary because it was meant to be like shocking. Like, what are these people doing? They're letting go of their family and their life and everything and their job to pursue this dream, And I just couldn't relate. I was like 14, and already for me to relate to somebody as like 50 plus at the time was kind of difficult. For me to relate to somebody who has kids was quite difficult, For me to relate to somebody who had a wife when I never ever had a girlfriend was also difficult. And I barely knew what transsexuality was. I think they pretty poorly explained it in the documentary. I just couldn't relate at all, and in fact I felt kind of freaked, because I saw these people and they just didn't pass at all, and they didn't seem to care. But to me, looking at these people, I felt, these people are never going to be respected as women. There's always going to be someone to make fun of them. And I didn't want to be like a guy in a dress. At 14, that perspective really seemed unappealing. In my dream, I was a normal girl living a somewhat normal life, and that just wasn't what I wanted. So after seeing that documentary, I felt, well, I mustn't be a transsexual. I don't want to be that. And I just didn't know anything about the topic really. I mean, in pop culture, I think the concept of a cross-dresser is pretty well known. But even then, like all that we know about cross-dresser is what Mrs. Doubtfire, and that's not really something you can relate to as a transsexual. It's not anywhere close to your life experience. It's completely meaningless to you. And that kind of sucks. Really, I only started learning about transsexuality when, I had the internet and I started going to college. And, finally I felt at college that I wasn't being picked on anymore. I was mostly at peace. And I started, searching on the internet for these things, And at first I thought I was a cross-dresser, so I started going on cross-dresser forums and getting information about it. And pretty soon I saw that the people I clicked with the most were the other transsexuals, the people who actually wanted to change their body to become more feminine and to live as women. So I kind of steered progressively in the direction of, figuring out that I was trans. But that also took me like a year or two, So I figured it out by maybe age 20 to 21. But it took some time. And I think we're very lucky to have the internet nowadays. But I think one of the things that helped me most to figure out that I was trans was talking to other transsexuals around my age. And it also helped me, to see that it's perfectly possible to be transsexual, to transition, when you're just after puberty, when you're young, and to end up being very passable and to live a pretty much normal life. I found it very reassuring to see that it was possible to do that, because it was very important for me. And I don't want to pick on older transsexuals and on transsexuals who don't pass, but I feel even now it's not super easy for me to relate with transsexuals that are older. The point where they are in their life is pretty different from the point where I'm at. And I think it's very nice nowadays that we have the internet and that we can meet people that are more like us, to have role models. A couple of years ago I met my friend Catherine in a support group. She's now post-op, and I think she's had a very good influence on me. It was good to see that it's possible to be transsexual and to live a normal life. To meet a person like that in real life, who is very helpful to me and everything. But there's something which I think is pretty sad in the transsexual community as a whole, is that a lot of transsexuals, when they go post-op, they want to go completely stealth. They don't want anybody to know that they were ever the other gender, the other sex, I should say. And so they move to a different city, and they cut their ties to their family, and they also cut their ties to all of their friends and to the transsexual community as a whole. So when you look at the trans community, you look at discussion forums and everything, and you look at YouTube, and it feels like 95% of the transsexuals out there are transitioning. And there really aren't that many post-ops. But that's because of what I just said. Many of the post-op transsexuals just cut all their ties. And I find that pretty sad, because I had some transsexual friends that, was really nice to talk to them. But at some point, they decided to not talk to me anymore, to not talk to anybody transsexual anymore, because in their mind, it's like, oh, I'm post-op now. Now I'm a real woman. I'm not a transsexual anymore. And I think that's kind of wrong, You'll always be transsexual, whether you like it or not. It's what you are. It's where you come from. And I think you probably shouldn't try to forget your roots like that. Because in a sense, it might make you more lonely in the long term, you know. It's nice to know where you come from. It's nice to know that there's people like you who can support you when things go bad, who can understand your situation perfectly. And I think genetic girls, you know, especially if they don't know about your situation, you know, they won't be completely able to relate to you. And I wish more post-op transsexual would stay in the community, you know, and you know, make more of an effort to show the world that it's possible to be transsexual and have a fruitful life, you know, a healthy lifestyle and everything that goes with it. Because right now, you know, if you search for transsexual on Google, I think a lot of the links you'll find, you know, are she-male porn. I think what most people know about transsexual is just she-male porn because there's just so much of it, and there's a lot of men that like it, and that's just sad, you know, because these people are prostitutes pretty much, you know, and they're giving us a fairly bad image. And on the other hand, you know, on one hand you have these transsexuals that go into pornography, prostitution, and drugs, and on the other hand the transsexuals who are successful, you know, who pass, who are post-op now, who live as women and have successful lives, a lot of them just vanish into nothingness because they don't want to be known as transsexuals anymore. And that's really sad because I think if you look at the gay community, you know, they've progressed a lot. They're a lot more accepted now than they were 50 years ago. But I think the reason for that is that 50 years ago, the people who were gay, you know, they didn't want anybody to know they were gay also, you know. The environment just wasn't friendly. They didn't want anybody to know. So if you were gay in the 1950s, you probably felt very much alone. Very much like transsexuals today that are growing up and feeling, you know, completely alone in the world. And if society was the way it was in the 1950s towards homosexuality, today, you know, I think the only place where you would see gay people or almost would be in gay porn. A bit like right now, the only place where you see trannies, or one of the places where you see them the most, unfortunately, is in tranny porn. And so I think it would be nice, you know, if more transsexuals that are successful would be willing to out themselves, or to at least not go stealth, you know, to make video blogs on YouTube, to have a web page, you know, where they share a little bit about themselves, you know, to reach out a little bit so that, you know, other transsexuals that are transitioning, and I think particularly the younger ones that are in their early teens, you know, can see that they aren't freaks, that there's people out there like them that transition and that lead successful, healthy lives, you know, that their future isn't just, you know, oh, I'm gonna be a boy or I'm gonna be a tranny prostitute, you know? Because I think some people will choose the tranny prostitute route when maybe there would have been another way to go about it. So, well, that's it for today, you know. I personally don't want to go stealth. I want to transition and to go full time, but I think even when I'm full time, you know, although I won't necessarily walk up to people and say, hey, by the way, I'm transsexual, I don't want to make it a secret. I don't want to move to another city and cut all my ties with the trans community. I don't want to lose my family and my friends. I want to keep what I have and to build on that. And I hope one day that I can be an inspiration for the younger transsexuals that are growing up and wondering, you know, what the hell is up with me? Why do I feel this way? And am I the only one? Okay, so that's it for today, and see you next time. Goodbye.